Greetings friends and welcome back to the Temple of the Bard. With this video we will continue our introduction into Absolute Comics Group with White Widow number 2. As always, these analyses are meant as a learning tool for those pursuing the art of storytelling and as constructive criticism for the story itself. As such, I ask both fans and creators to view this video in the spirit with which it was intended and not to let mild teasing or sarcasm get in the way. We left off last issue with an armor-clad Gabrielle Garcia fleeing her first fight to the death with a mysterious, though very well-dressed, strike force, leaving only one survivor, and then going to her college's computer lab to view a thumb drive given to her by her recently murdered father. This issue begins with a video of Gabby's parents revealing that they secretly work for a government weapons contractor named The Group, and that in order to save her as a baby from a rare disease, they had to secretly use the mother's project involving manipulating spider genes, specifically that of the rare White Widow. After years of no signs of any side effects, her recent collapse during a volleyball game showed that the gene therapy was beginning to fail. In order to boost it, they used the father's secret project, which happened to be a nanotech injection to make super soldiers. The video ends, at which point Gabby's friend Regina walks in on her, discovering Gabby's new secret. Cut to an unnamed boss lady from the group interrogating some mystery prisoner, who we're probably not supposed to guess is obviously Gabby's mother. Boss lady kills the survivor of the strike force, for reasons, and then sicks a new electro goon on our hero. Cut back to Gabby and Regina discussing Gabby's new armor and situation, when they are interrupted by news of an attack by the group's electro goon. White Widow swings into action and wins the day, being sure to pick up the gear dropped from the boss fight, which will lead her to her next mission. So, succeed or fail. Unfortunately, it's another fail. The reasons why are poor use of exposition, poor understanding of necessity, yet more cliches, and a weak internal struggle. I won't go into the cliches, since it's basically the same critique from last issue. Suffice it to say, there's still a problem. Instead, we'll start off with exposition. Let's go back to the beginning. Interestingly enough, the book actually begins with a good execution of exposition. Gabby's parents understand that they're taking a big risk in stealing the group's projects to save their daughter, and as such, this might be the last opportunity they will ever have to tell their daughter the truth. In other words, there's a sound motivation within the narrative to reveal this information to a character, and by extension, the reader. Now juxtapose this to the next example we have of exposition, Gabby and Regina learning about the nano-silk armor. Regina pretty much hypothesizes everything about how the armor works. Now, unless the book is pulling a bait-and-switch, making Regina wrong, how could Regina possibly infer as much information as she does, as accurately as she does? They literally just heard a brief summary of their situation and have not had sufficient time to properly learn about it. And the defense of Regina is super smart doesn't work here. If she were a serious science student, she'd understand that conflating a tested conclusion and an untested hypothesis is bad science. And as a side point, her understanding of biology is pretty shaky since spider silk is not produced by the spider's DNA, but silk glands working in tandem with an extraction system. She skipped a few steps between genes and webs, but I digress. Not only is this blatant info dump unrealistic, but it cheats the story of material that could easily have allowed it to advance. Instead, for the sake of this issue, it would have been enough for them to explore what the armor does and not how it works. Additionally, Regina could have spent the next few weeks or issues studying the research on the thumb drive and properly learning about the armor. Not only is this better exposition, but character development, as it actually shows her applying her scientific skills in a way that soundly supports the narrative. What we actually got was her first guess just being correct. Since I've already compared this title to Spider-Man, let's actually compare this point head-to-head. The black costume we now know as the Venom symbiote was first introduced in The Amazing Spider-Man number 252 in May 1984. We're shown over the course of the issue that the new costume is capable of extraordinary abilities, and we're told that it came from another planet. It wasn't until issue number 258 that Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four reveals that the costume is a sentient living being. If you think 7 issues is a long time to wait for a reveal, keep in mind that there was also Peter Parker the Spectacular Spider-Man issues number 90 through 95, and Marvel Team-Up, which at the time was predominantly a Spider-Man title, numbers 141 through 146. That's a total of 19 issues between discovery and explanation. And it completely worked, because the mystery itself can be fun to just observe. With that in mind, I think White Widow could have spread out explaining how the armor works over at least a few more issues. Now let's examine necessity as a literary plot tool. There are 3 moments in the book that are not necessary and thus fail to justify their existence, and in one case, the advancement of the plot. The first one is the mother's standoffish and cold-hearted attitude towards Gabby. The mother says in the video that it was to be more objective as she assessed her daughter's condition after the gene therapy when Gabby was a baby. But why? People, and especially seasoned scientists and parents, succeed in compartmentalizing their emotions all the time for the sake of their children. There's no need for Gabby's mother to go to such an extreme to simply maintain objectivity, and especially not over the time period of about 2 decades. It seems to have no other reason to exist other than to artificially inject drama into the story. Instead, a loving relationship would give it at least as much, if not more, motivation for Gabby to rescue her mom than a desire to maybe mend a fractured relationship. Next is the boss lady's execution of the strike force's team leader from issue number 1. After hearing a report of the team's annihilation, boss lady mentions how close she is to the team leader before shooting her in the face. Yeah, I've seen this scene before too.
Militia pigs and let Americans come kill my brother. Without killing one in return. Okay, that's what you could do. Here's what I can do. I love this man like a brother. He was a dear friend and partner to me. So I took no joy in that. But just think, if I could do this to one I love, what could I do to someone I hate?
Niche. She says it was necessary to maintain secrecy, but doesn't kill her assistant because she's still useful. But wait, wouldn't a highly trained and lethal field agent with a score to settle against your target also be useful? Is your super secret government agency so fully staffed that you can really afford to lose yet another field agent? And does one earn a place on a super secret government agency strike force if there's any doubt at all about one's discretion? More unnecessary drama for its own sake. Not only that, but it proves my point about the previous issue. The only reason the team leader survived was to be killed by the boss lady in the very next issue just to establish her as the villain. However, if Gabby kills the whole team in issue number 1, it's a much more powerful moment at the time, and it avoids an unnecessary plot hole in issue number 2. There are other ways to establish Boss Lady as a villain. Instead, show her enjoying herself as she tortures the person she's interrogating, or sit on it and reveal it over time with future issues. Next, the main reason Gabby goes to confront the Electrogoon is to save Chase. And how does she do so? By showing up and telling him to run. If this is the case, he damn well could have saved himself the whole time. There's no actual reason for Gabby to go with what will clearly be a superpowered smackdown for which she is admittedly not ready. Instead, the Electrogoon should have a group of bystanders, which includes Chase, trapped and threatening to kill them, maybe even actually killing them one by one. Now there's a clear and immediate threat to Chase's life, making it necessary for Gabby to book it to the fight and save the day. I also maintain that putting Chase and Gabby in a romantic relationship adds stronger motivation for Gabby to run headfirst into a fight. Finally, let's take a look at the internal struggle. In this issue, Gabby is coming to grips, albeit very briefly, with the events of the previous book. However, it's manifesting itself with her questioning whether or not she's a monster. The problem is that there's no real reason for her to ask this specific question other than the team leader called her one during the fight. Regina even brings up the fact that Gabby was defending herself from the people who presumably murdered her father. The obvious answer to the question of whether or not she's a monster is no. Instead of asking whether she's a monster, which ultimately is subjective, have her deal with the objective fact that she is now a killer. There's no getting around it and no going back. For the rest of her life, she'll have to carry the fact that she's killed people. How does that affect her, and how will she cope? Also, it raises an interesting moral question to explore. Is it justified to kill in self-defense? For soldiers to kill on the battlefield? For police to kill in the line of duty? Now you're asking real questions that have real impacts, and as a reader, have piqued my interest. That's all for today. If you found anything I've said to be interesting or useful, feel free to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, friends.